Thanks for turning out on such a miserable cold evening. My name is Glenn Whitley. I'm chair of the BCS Sussex branch. This is the first of our monthly meetings, which will be, as far as possible, the second Wednesday of every month in this lecture theatre. And our theme this year is AI. And today's talk by Paul Rumsey and myself is by way of introduction to a year on AI, and we'll be discussing issues raised by it. So we thought, as an introduction to the subject, we talk about ChatGPT, because that is the particular application that everyone's talking about. So are you ready to start, Paul?
Sure, if I can get the screen going back to where it was. So sorry about that. Okay. Probably need to get that screen down like we had it before, so I can swap between the two. Sorry, mate.
Do you need to be wearing a microphone?
No, I've got one here. That's it, yeah. Well, hello guys. Again, thank you for turning out tonight. Committee, BCS committee has decided effectively, AI, and I'm probably going to get ahead of myself here, but
I'm not sure the mic's on. Just
hello?
Yeah.
So anyway, good evening once again. BCS this year, West Sussex branch, is going to focus on AI. I think it's very important. I will go over and do the slides, otherwise I'm going to get ahead of myself, as I usually do. So effectively, we go over here to this slide. You can kind of see the 90s gave us the internet. So my generation thought, oh, this is cool. We got on board with that. The younger folks here tonight, AI is the new internet, effectively. It's going to change the world. It already is. We're going to explore some of that through our talks and panel discussions that we're going to have this year. So I do hope you'll come to it. Now, is there anybody here that actually saw any sort of stuff online quickly for this event tonight and came because of that? One person. Okay, good. So my social media is sort of working. Anyway, okay, so what's the AI doing for us? There's a number of things, the stuff that's up here in the yellow cells, are all things that we are using right now. If you've got Google Home, Assistant, Alexa, all forms of AI. But what really intrigued me and got me going was this ChatGPT, which we're going to take a closer look at in a minute. So some of the pros and cons right now around sort of ChatGPT, and I'll talk to you more about what I do with it, are there. So improved efficiency and productivity, enhanced customer experiences, personalization, better decision-making and problem-solving, automation of tedious tasks, innovation and discovery. So on that, I will go over now to what I do for my day job. I'm kind of working with a small startup, and we do some big ticket items in the learning space. And one of my jobs is basically to create policies for the rest of the staff. And I've used ChatGPT for that. So for example, and I find it a very good foundation. So if I type in here, something like create an HR policy for sickness. And this is just something out the top of my head. And it says an error occurred. Wonderful AI. So that's part of the thing. I don't know whether this is going to play ball with us, but I can try again. So regenerate the response. It's not letting me do anything here. So if I do new chat, come back in, let's try something else. Create a legal Employment contract. Now, if this works, I'll give you a bit of backstory on this. There was an error. So maybe we're not going to be able to use this tonight, so I'll go back to the presentation, but
Try and refresh this up.
okay. Okay, create a employment contract. And if this doesn't work, I'm abandoning it. And here we go. Now, the backstory while it does its thing is I use it for this sort of type of stuff all the time. But I just don't say, okay, that's good to go. I then go back and say, right, this is a great foundation, which it is. Because I would have to pay a lawyer, a solicitor for that. And current fees for doing a contract around about £2,000 to £3,000, depending on which lawyer or solicitor I use, sorry. And they would take them a week. They'd have to be fed a load of information. And I could hone that and get the same thing by basically, after it finished generating, going, I want you to do this now, I want you to do that now, and we regenerate it and then tune it to what I want. I also use it for basically a foundation to write other documents. So ChatGPT, how many people know ChatGPT and use it? Really, a lot of you, right? And it sort of blew on our radar in my work in January. Now it was released, I believe, in November. I think the data in it's a good up until what, 2021, 2022 or something. It took data from the internet, and that's what it's looking at. So obviously, as it gets more advanced, and there's other things out there besides ChatGPT, it's going to be interesting, and it's going to be interesting where it takes us. This whole thing. We're going to get into some of the cons about it now. I'm going to come out of GGP because of time. Get back into the presentation mode. So I just said about improved efficiency and productivity. For me, it's brilliant. Okay, it's helping my day job. I'm a man of one doing many things. I juggle many different tasks because of my role and in a small company. I come from an IT background, but now I'm doing legal, I'm doing contracts, I'm doing HR, I'm just doing disciplinary things, all sorts of things, and also trying to build this company as well. And so from that regard, that is my spot. ChatGPT is my savior. It really is. It's really helped me out. I was writing policies by myself, doing Google last year, going, oh, that's it. I'll steal there, I'll steal this, steal that, coming up with my own policy. But you just see how quickly it'll do something. And it's the same for other things. You know, a lady came over, someone who's in university doing a later degree, and she had to do a dissertation. And so I said, well, what is it about? She had no idea what it was. Within 5 minutes, she had a dissertation, which she could turn in. But I'm sure Blair will come on to that a little later, about the pros and cons on the educational side. But in the workplace, it's making a fundamental difference. And that is key. Because where you go into your jobs, the people that are going to be going into jobs, this will be your work. And then you've got to think about the nefarious activities that you can do with this stuff. We are a video organization. Part of our stuff does filming, and we get into stuff like that. So we are using it to write scripts now. Baseline scripts are knocked out in probably 5 minutes, whereas we used to hire a script writer to do that. Think about job gone. And we also now, with filmmaking, can take a voice, like my voice, for example, record it, type in text, and it'll come back with the same inflection. It'll sound just like me. I've heard it. It really, really kind of made me feel a bit eerie when I heard that. And that's all happening now. And all you have to do is Google it, YouTube it. There are tons of guys out there, far younger than me, that will talk you through all the AI stuff that's out there right now. And it is fascinating. It's the first time this old guy, after many years of IT, got into IT probably in the late 80s, the 90s hit, internet was my thing, and I was like, yeah, Now I stopped getting excited about it, it just became more complex and actually over years got rather boring, but this is an exciting age. This really is. This is a new world. When we come out of it, as I said before, it's going to be a completely different landscape. And those who control it, there's going to be some millionaires made out of this, but there's also going to be a shift in people's jobs and roles. And some people are going to lose work. It's as simple as that. And if I was one of these lawyers that does contracts, I'd be a little bit worried because in theory, if I took this contract now, I had the contract drawn up on here from scratch, went through it myself, turned it over to the lawyer. Instead of paying thousands, I'd pay about £400 to have that contract signed off by a lawyer. So you can see the cost savings right there for a small company. And it's just going to carry on. Right, I'm not going to go on too much. I'm just going to whip through these slides and hand over to Blay. So we looked at some of that. Kind of had down some of the efficiencies around this stuff. So enhanced customer experience and personalization. I haven't seen much of that, to be honest, yet, but I'm sure it's coming. I think what we can do in our world is listen to customers, take what they're saying, put it into AI in some form, whether it be something that's generating a video or an actor or something like that, and use that. So possibly better decision making and problem solving. I have a bit of a thing about that one, on the pro and the con. So has it helped me problem solve? Absolutely. I'm talking about ChatGPT again, but is it good? It's only as good as the data that's going into that. And we're going to be talking a lot more about that in other discussions and panel discussions down the road because of the bias, and I'm not going to go into that tonight. But really, a lot of this stuff is only as good as the stuff that's being put into it. So, you know, is it going to solve the world's problems? Well, it might help out in some things, but problem solving, yeah, I think I can say I can buy into that. Innovation and discovery. Yes, I think that the new AI landscape is bringing us a lot more and can teach us a lot more about things we don't know very quickly, and also generate various output. So it's an exciting time, and I'm kind of like a little buzz about this stuff, guys, which is unusual for me these days. So here's the cons. And limited emotional intelligence and empathy, unemployment, we've talked about that. Definitely going to be something that's going to have to be considered. Bias, again, I'm not going to deep dive into any of these topics tonight because we're going to be doing those in future presentations with other people over the months coming. Then we got one more. Yeah, it's the same sort of thing. It's more, you know, we've covered this stuff. Actually, I've gone back on the slide, I think, here, guys. Okay. So examples using ChatGPT. Okay. So there's some examples up there. This is one I did in case ChatGPT didn't work. How many of you ever or know about General George S. Patton, World War II guy? Some hands going up, some younger hands going up. Good. There's a movie out called Patton. Now, I don't know, I like the movie anyway. So I thought, at the top, well, in the words of George S. Patton, like how he spoke to people and everything else, you know, right to think about Ukraine, condemning the invasion of Ukraine. Now, I didn't put everything there, but that first paragraph, if you have a quick read of it, sounds pretty close to the way he would have said things. And then the next one was write me a dissertation on the future of astronomy, just something out of my head, field of astronomy, and it went on. I wasn't going to put all that in there. Just gives you an idea about ChatGPT and what it can do. It's a pretty interesting tool, but there's better out there, and I haven't used those. But, you know, watch this space. I'll come back and chat about that as my experiences grow. Now, I'm going to hand over to Blay and let him take up the rest of the conversation. It's been a pleasure. Hope you enjoyed it. And over to Blay. He's going to use that guy. All right.
Microphone working? Yes, it is working. I'll shout anyway. Obviously, I'm talking to a room full of early adopters here. everyone said, well, nearly everyone said they used ChatGPT. But the first question I want to ask is, can we avoid it? So taking up Paul's theme that this is really revolutionary. So I'm going to tell you a story back from 1996. Two postgrads at Stanford University had an idea. They were working on citations of academic papers. And they went to their supervisor, who was an AI guru of my generation, called Terry Winograd, and said, is it worth developing this idea? And he said, yeah, you might as well pursue it. So they developed an idea, and advance the slide. They gave it away for free. So they developed their own idea. They gave it away for free. And in spite of giving it away for free, grew into one of the, well, always in the top three most affluent companies on the planet. They named their product after a mis-selling of a very large number. You worked out who I'm talking about yet? It's Larry Page and Sergey Brin, right? and the company's called Google. And not only was it immensely profitable, given away for free, but it's like Hoover and vacuum cleaner. You don't say do a web search now, do you? You say Google it, right? And that's the sort of benefit that this technology, that's previous generation of AI technology, the sort of revolution it brings. And I won't ask how many of you use Google, because I know the answer. But I should ask, how many of you used this in the last 4 hours or something like that? Now, giving it away for free is actually very profitable. It's strange that someone with an academic background is talking about the commercial citation here. It's actually very profitable because it's a massive data collection, right? So I'm going to say, maybe with a biased years in informatics at Sussex perspective, that the algorithm of ChatGPT is not really all that sophisticated. It's the sort of stuff we were doing in the 1990s. It's an artificial neural net. Right? Obviously, OpenAI won't tell me the exact technical details, but I know it's a very big neural net with 175 billion nodes. So it's big, it's very big. But what gives it the performance is the data. And again, back in the 90s, we didn't think this would be a route to generating essays or producing a textual understanding. We thought that AI would need to actually know something. It would need some sort of ontology, to use the technical philosophical term, so that when you put in George Patton, it knew that that was general with certain characteristics and so on. And in fact, it turns out that that's not the way that it's been achieved, right? What ChatGPT does, and almost every other program that does natural language generation or natural language understanding, is it just looks at the statistical probability of certain words being together. And what ChatGPT does, as Paul says, is it uses the entire internet as its data set. Because as you all know, everything on the internet is true. And I shall come back to that, because that's an important thing, and that's something that we need to think about. Is ChatGPT a data grab? Well, I'll leave it to you. I think it possibly is. Right? And the more you use it, the more you comment on it, the more you're supplying the necessary data for this type of approach to AI to get more effective. Now, the way I normally explain how you can get tremendous performance from AI with this very relatively simple algorithm is in a field where AI is already exceeding human capability. And that's diagnosing X-ray scans, distinguishing tumors that are cancerous from tumors that are malign. and AI can exceed human performance in this area. Right? Is this because the AI is brilliant? No, it's not. Right? It's because a human oncology consultant probably in training sees maybe 5,000 scans and then practices. Right? Over an entire career, they might see 50, 100,000 scans. Right? Where an AI system, you can train it on 1 million scans in minutes. And even the dumbest medical student, given that many examples, would learn to distinguish one from the other. You see what I'm saying? It's the data. It's the power of big data. And what I suppose we didn't realize back in the 1990s when we thought the route to AI was a very smart algorithm, or actually, something resembling what we consider human IQ. And that may well have been a blind alley. That's something for you to think about. What we didn't realize was that astronomical data sets would become available in the 21st century. Incredibly large data sets. So that's what we're getting the power from. Paul's already said this, and I'd like to say this is not about just one named application. Right? There's a lot almost ready to go. And actually, Paul's given away, I don't know if he's giving away commercial secrets, but text-to-speech, speech that can't be distinguished from human speech, all these things are ready to go. So you might phone with a complaint on the telephone, think you're talking to a human being, but actually you're talking to an AI, and you'll be hard pushed to tell the difference. And this is not science fiction. This is later this year, I would say. It's all ready to go. It's just a question of the right people talking to each other. And of course, it can be built into other technologies. Sorry to talk about education, but it's where I've spent most of my career. In many areas, ChatGPT can produce a fairly good essay. And should we change student assessment? Well, I think so. I've thought so for quite a while. But how do we do that and remain fair? That's a question that I've often knocked my head against in the academic world. I'm a great believer in students giving presentations. If you know what you're talking about, you should be able to stand up and talk to an audience like this. But apparently that's unfair to students who have nerves about talking and so on. And even unseen exams are stressful for students. So allowing them to produce an essay in non-stressful conditions, go home and think about it for a few days is a far fairer method of assessment, except of course that ChatGPT can turn out a reasonable essay. Brilliant, maybe not, but then are students required to be brilliant? I'll confess that I used to say, when students said, how do I get an A? I would say, do better than I can. I can't tell you how to get an A, because if I were to do this assessment, I would only get a B+. And they'd say, that's not fair. And I'd say, well, fair or not, it's what I believe, because I believe that humanity should be moving forward and improving. And if you want to know why, you read chapter 18 of a book called Conjectures and Reputations by Karl Popper. Anybody read it? Just me then. It's out there. And that's why I think you should do better than me to get an A. But of course, that's, again, not regarded as fair, right? The students would say, if you can't tell me how to get the top marks, then you're not teaching me. Interesting view, but that's their view. You'll get your chance to come back at me on some of these things. So what can we do about it? At this point, I should confess, I'm a member of the advisory board of the All-Party Parliamentary Advisory Group on AI. Nothing that happens there is in any way secret, so I'm quite prepared to tell tales from the palace of Westminster. If you want to ask me how legislation about AI is going and what the politicians are hearing from the field. I've been in a lot of very informative meetings. I'll just share one thing with you, right, which might interest the younger people who are going to apply for jobs. Presumably all know that in 2015, Amazon wrote a CV selecting program that taught itself to be incredibly sexist. You all know this story? They didn't program it to be sexist, it learned that for itself. Now, and because of that, Amazon gave up AI sifting of CVs. The last time we had 6 recruiters in the Palace of Westminster, I asked them all, do you use AI to sift CVs? All but one, I won't name the company, but all but one said, yes, we do. Yes, we know about Amazon, but we still use AI to sift CVs. So when you make an application, if you make an application by CV, you're dealing with an AI program straight away, in spite of known limitations and defects of this approach. Intellectual property, not resolved. If someone uses ChatGPT, do they share the intellectual property with it? Or is it still them? Because they wrote the request. They write a thing in the style of George Patton. Plagiarism. Don't know the answers to that either. Privacy. This is interesting because, of course, any work you put out, and there's lots of papers of mine on the web. Any work you put out on the web is fair game. ChatGPT or any other AI program. Is that an example of plagiarism? We don't know. And I would say, I mean, as for the politicians, don't hold your breath for legislation on these matters. In technological matters, legislation has always been behind the technology. It's always been behind, there's no way around that. And the legislation is well behind the technology in the field of AI, well behind. And that's not anybody's fault. It's the legislation takes a lot of time, and legislators have other priorities, and the technologists just want to get it to work. And this is going to work. Who owns the data? It's not totally clear. At this point, I should just gently throw in that OpenAI, who've released ChatGPT, they're a very high-powered Silicon Valley company. Their declared objective is AGI, Artificial General Intelligence, and that is the El Dorado in this field of AI it has all the capabilities of humans. Whether or not ChatGPT is a route to that, I'm inclined to doubt. You might doubt, but I'm saving the philosophical bits right for the end. Next one. Where are we up to here?
Privacy, ownership, and data.
Okay. At this point, I should also say that one of the things that BCS can offer you is actually a voice in government matter. The government does ask the advice of BCS on matters of legislation or even regulation. They don't always listen, but more than that, I probably can't say. They don't always listen, but they have listened on some important issues that I've been involved in. So if you have suggestions under this heading, please make them to me, because I can pass them to people who might just listen. And I'm hoping you have got suggestions, because here's the technology, it's running away, it's going to be widespread use, I agree with you. It'll be everywhere. And then we're going to have this wake-up moment, what should we do about it? Right. I said I'd save the philosophy to last, but we can do a bit of philosophy. ChatGPT doesn't do a lot of reasoning. It just is very good. Do you want to try this one? It's just very good at doing statistical generalizations over text like the ones in front of it. Which raises the question, do we perhaps achieve our intelligent performance with as little understanding as ChatGPT? You're all thinking, no, I really understand. I know who the general pattern was and so on. But, well, I wonder about this. And I'll tell another story from education. Many years ago, I was in a heated debate on marking. But generally speaking, when you co-mark with another lecturer, you don't disagree. Or if you disagree, you don't disagree about the ranking of the students. You know, some people are generous and they give everyone 10% more than me, and some people are mean and they give everyone 10% less than me. But you don't disagree about the rankings. But in this case, I had a long and protracted disagreement with a member of faculty, now a professor in this very department, but I won't say any more. And I said, I gave that one a very generous mark because it was a very original solution. They did something that was very creative. I've never seen anyone take that approach before. To which I was told, well, we're not teaching originality. This is a technical subject. This is not art. This is a technical subject. Originality has no part in it. So you can't give them extra marks for originality. Right? And I suspect that debate still isn't resolved. I keep giving sly glances to the head of department, but I suspect that debate isn't resolved. Do we expect humans to be creative or don't we? In terms of jobs, the All Party Parliamentary Group thinks that the profession most at risk from AI is chartered accountants. And you might find that, I mean, Paul said lawyers could be at risk, but I'm not that worried about employment, but some jobs are going to have to change a lot. Remember what I said about the specialists, the cancer specialists, the oncologists, very good at diagnosing scans, can be replaced by AI. Right. The medical jobs that can't be replaced by AI are general practitioner or family doctor in American. Right. Someone's got to actually speak to the patient and do some sifting work. Right. They can use AI to help them, but that job's not at risk. Nursing jobs aren't at risk. Another job that I don't see being at risk, if you have a leak in your kitchen and you call a plumber, right, that's going to be a job for a human. It would be possible to build a robot to fix your leak, but it would be ridiculously expensive because all the fittings, all the tools, all the access panels are designed for humans. It's been installed by humans, it's human size, right? It's much easier to just get a human to fix the leak. Right. However, when you tap your credit card to the plumber's mobile phone and the plumber drives off, their tax work, their invoicing, that can all be done by AI. No need for any humans with that, is there? So there's a big change in jobs. Now, going on to what I said about we don't give extra marks for creativity to students. I just wonder if for a long time we've been redesigning systems. One of the systems we've been redesigning is education, which is much more tick the boxes than it was in my day, right? Much more. We've been designing systems to make people behave more like AI. We've been building employment opportunities for AI rather than employment opportunities for humans. And this is management and so on. So I'm sure you've had the experience already. I'm talking to a chatbot online with a problem with your bank or your insurance, and then saying, I give up, can I talk to a human? Then you get to talk to a human who says exactly what the chatbot says. And when you say, well, look, this is different, they say, I'm sorry, the system won't allow that. So you might as well have dealt with ChatGPT in the first place. Again, you're all too young to remember this, but When I was at school, a local bank manager was an important figure in the community. They decided whether or not you got a loan, whether or not you got a mortgage, whether or not your business could keep on working for another couple of months without meeting its payments. That's all gone. In the 21st century, if you ask for a loan, you might very well go to your local bank. You might very well talk to a person in a uniform, because studies have shown you're more trusting of people in uniform. But they type it into a computer. And if you ask, do you take the decision, or does the computer take the decision? They'll say the computer takes the decision. Now, that may be a good thing, that may be a bad thing, because back in the days when the bank manager could take esoteric decisions, some people were favorites and some people were disadvantaged by it. It was not considered fair, and maybe the computer's much more fair. But what I'm just suggesting to you is we are building systems that require humans to behave like AI. And I'm guessing in this audience, there's no one who's ever worked in a call center. But I'll just tell you what happens in a call center. You're given a script and you have to follow the script. If you deviate from the script, you will be sacked. Right? And you have to do so many calls per hour, and your performance against calls per hour is monitored. So do we want humans to build jobs like that, or would it be better to give it to ChatGPT? I know what I think.
That's it. Sorry, let's just thank you.
Can you bring up the next slide? We haven't said much about bias in data, because that's going to be the subject of our main meeting. It's a repeat of last year's, it's very similar to last year's panel on bias in data. So we'll talk about bias in AI, because as you know, data is full of bias. And when I said everything on the internet is true, I was being sarcastic. But I could actually finish with a story that illustrates a little problem with that. I actually have a personal experience of the Wikipedia entry about me being hacked to say some very rude things, which I won't repeat, and rude things about this university, which was a lesson to me that with Wikipedia, any fool can write anything, and any fool sometimes does. So I don't agree with Nigel Shadbolt, what he said on Monday night's Radio 4 program about ChatGPT, that Wikipedia is now a trusted source. It's not as far as I'm concerned, and it's personal. But when you lecture to students now, they frequently Google what you're saying while you're talking. And I had a seminar where a student said to me, Wikipedia says you're wrong about that. And I said, yes, I know, but I've got better things to do than stay up every night correcting it. There's a guy at a university in Wales who's got a personal grudge against me. But the student didn't let it go at that. Right? The student said, well, you should teach us what Wikipedia says, because that's what we'll be expected to know. So there's an example of Google creating truth. I might know it's wrong, but I shouldn't say that to students, because they'll be expected to know the generally accepted fact. Thank you for listening. I now must apologize for my voice. Both Paul and I have really suffered in the last few days. Thank you for listening. I'm hoping there'll be lots of questions and suggestions, because we want to take a discussion theme through. Next month, we'll talk about diversity in AI, and in May, we'll talk about bias in data in a panel discussion. So, thank you.
Has anyone got any questions or anything they want to share?
I just wonder what was the prospects might be of replacing state government by it's already happened. Generous with retrain transform them? What might be the advantages and the disadvantages and the issues that might come up? Such a transformer could be worked, for instance, by the civil service. Perhaps a retrained section of the civil service, which might itself be a generative transformer.
I don't think there's much prospect of replacing government, not because it couldn't be done, and we might have a useful discussion about whether or not it might be a good idea. One of the things I used to say back in my early days is I believe in AI because if you let humans run the world, you end up with World War I. Thanks, proven. Oh, well, you know, pick your own disaster. Doing better than humans is not really a high bar in many fields, and government being one of them. However, I don't see any prospect of government moving over and letting this in. Personally, at the moment, I do see a lot of legal drafting, like Paul said, and preparation of regulations being handed over to ChatGPT, and a lot of specialist errors coming from that, which may be very hard to deal with, because you might have the time to read the legislation and say, this is stupid, but you won't have the power to do anything about it. That's one of the problems that we've got. In fact, one of the problems I didn't really mention, that a real problem with AI is it removes intermediaries, it removes local branch managers from the decision train. So it gives a lot more power to the people at the top, a lot more, because you know they can just press a button and it'll happen in all branches. Is everybody convinced by that? Or is it worth me going into it?
But just remind me of something like 30 years ago. I took a little course in the law, and they said it's joint communist legislative for or against something that can't be policed. So I don't know if anybody can hear me, but pretty much. What you just said reminded me a little bit of a lecture I had on law 30 years ago. And I said, you know, sometimes politicians, governments try to legislate or come up with laws, but many laws can't be policed or can't be enforced. So I think maybe this is something that actually AI, in the same way that maybe a cancer scientist goes through various cases. You look at what they do in Singapore, China, or God knows where, and what can actually be legislated and what can be enforced and what can't. And then, you know, we should worry about those things. And that includes plagiarism and many other things. But I think that should also be a starting point for us to think about, you know, what. Go on a tangent.
No, it's interesting. 30 years ago, I was writing papers on AI and the law. And again, legislators, Parliament, very keen for AI, because every time they pass a law, they write, if you've heard about it in the news over the last few days, an ouster clause, which basically says, we mean what it says here, and it's not to be interpreted. And the legal profession always ignores that and makes differing interpretations. Now, my view, 30 years ago, and now is, that is an important process of social negotiation. Right? That is not lawyers being awkward, that is society working. Some things should be a matter of permanent discussion. And one of those things is interpretations of the law. You don't have to agree. You might think those in power should have absolute authority and there's an end to it. That's what they think, right? But that AI has the potential to change that. And you've just seen technology that can change that. It actually makes a difference to society right the way through. It's taking power away from the average lawyer and giving it to a committee in Parliament who write the law.
Further to your question, it's a very relevant question because for the last 3 years, I've been involved in legislation that's gone through Parliament and now working for a regulator responsible for applying that law, which is the Telecom Security Act, and I work for Ofcom, who regulate communications providers and apply the Telecom Security Act to those providers to further the cyber defence. And some of the challenges we've had is the vagueness of that legislation. The use of the words reasonable and proportionate. Right. Now, where I see AI scoring is to run it through an AI engine that can challenge it and maybe look at precedents that have been set in the past for those kind of scenarios being challenged, so that you end up with a set of legislation that is as near as watertight as you can get it. There will always be lawyers who are paid to challenge it and obfuscate and get the communications provider out of a difficult situation because they haven't complied with the law. And they'll argue, you know, what does reasonable mean? Yeah, does proportionate mean? And the problem with that, of course, is that, as you said earlier in this lecture, getting the legislation into law with the Telecom Security Act, it started with a set of requirements back in 2017. It's only just gone into law. Now, I don't know about you, but technology moves on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's probably not applicable. Yeah. So there's I see AI, for instance, exactly what you use it for, and what I've started to use it for, ChatGPT, is for shortcutting a thought process.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and not using the output, but reworking it.
Yep.
Yeah, and making it my own.
a
I'm not
foundation.
talking about a thesis. I'm talking about using it in reports to absolutely express what I want.
It's absolutely correct what you're saying there, because we do the same thing. We, you know, for example, like script writing, they will have like a basic script and then we'll tune it. So it's a foundation, and that's where I look at ChatGPT for the work I do. It's a foundation and resource I didn't used to have, and now I can go in there, have it do the basic, which would take, you know, a few days if I was just handwriting it from scratch. And I can go back and go, okay, well, actually, that's no good, that's no good. And I can actually go back to ChatGPT and have it tuned, or I can use my own intelligence and go, well, that's not applicable to us in my situation. I'll adapt it to that and put that in there. Yeah.
Do you actually use ChatGPT to explore what a reasonable precaution might mean?
Yeah, but only in part. I don't put loads of stuff in there because I mean the fact is, I realised in using it exactly what you said. It's using the whole of the internet, right? And it's coming back with ideas that I've never thought of and reworded it. So I've thrown it back and say reword this differently, or in the past tense or in the future tense or whatever. And it's able to do that. Where I see it really useful legally is in precedent, when you're looking at what precedents have been set legally. And another area where I see it really useful, and I was explaining this earlier outside, was I was over at friends over the weekend, and she had a great deal of trouble persuading her doctor that she had something wrong with that. She had a whole set of symptoms, and eventually the doctor came in with hypothyroidism. We sat there at her dinner table, and I asked her to tell me her symptoms, and on my pad I typed them in, and immediately ChatGPT said, "You've got hypothyroidism." I don't replace the doctor, but unfortunately for doctors, if you can go with some evidence that you think this is, and you say to them, "Please test me for that," we might shortcut all that stuff, and that's why I see it. That's where I see it used. I'm also very scared of it.
Yeah, I don't think doctors like a patient going to them having diagnosed themselves. It's a professional pride thing, but the doctor shouldn't be too proud to use ChatGPT the way you did.
The doctor should have also listened to the patient, and if the patient's telling she's got symptoms, and she, taking indigestion tablet, take some paracetamol, because I got a 7-minute slow, and the doctor said, that ain't good.
I have conscious of time and wrapping up. We have a lot of students here. And I would like to hear from the students right now, their questions and things, because you are the future. You're going to be affected by this world. So let's go to you first. Then.
So we're just talking about there are some jobs disappear after the AI, right? But I think actually ChatGPT, we may think about the position pending the structure as well. So, for example, I open my company, but I don't have enough money, so I can't hire a junior level. So if I just hire 10 junior level, but I know the ChatGPT is free, it's quite cheap so far, and then I just hire some special professional level of the person, just one person, and then I just ask them if you need some minor job, then you can use ChatGPT because he knows how can revise everything. So now we are in the student. We think like maybe the job market, they are not much looking for the junior level or the internship position as well. And then in this point, we can think about like education industry, how much they can provide education to the student, how much they just training during the university or the college levels. There might be a thing about it. Really not necessary to think about like cheating or something, which is important when we have some issue. But we also think about like in the future, how much you just ready for that provides for the education to the student, because university provide education because we training to student right to go to the industry, right? But the industry looking for some the student employee who have much more professional skill. The student cannot get a job.
Yeah, exactly. It is changing things, and I'll let Blay take the educational side of that. This background.
Well, all I can say is, people need to use it. I notice is it the International Baccalaureate or the UK Baccalaureate? Yes, they've actually said they want they've actually upfront said we expect students to use it to generate essays, which is interesting, because what you're looking for is work beyond the standard of ChatGPT, which I assume as a marker you can just establish yourself by giving the question that you've given the students to ChatGPT at the beginning. And that's quite an interesting approach. So you're saying to your students, give me added value over what this AI program can do. Which might be too much of a challenge, I don't know. Students, you tell me.
We've got another question over here quickly.
So obviously AI is probably a quite big part of the future. So I'm wondering from an education standpoint, how do you think that teachers should teach the students on how to use it? Because a very big skill is how can you efficiently Google? People come up to me like, how do you know this? And I'm like, I can Google the right phrases, so I know what to look for. So how can teachers like adapt that learning so that people can get the right answers?
Well, I believe Scribble's not asked that you can use ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Right?
I guess there's a risk in any fast-moving technological field that students can be ahead of their tutors. And I think the tutors just have to be modest about that. Because, again, what added value do you give? And in my talk, and I mean, all words of examples to GPT. I mean, what I can say is, I don't think the algorithm's all that impressive, because neural nets are all that. as far as I'm concerned. So I can give a historical perspective because I was there when people were training neural nets with 200 nodes, and it took all weekend for it to settle to a conclusion. As for using ChatGPT, there'll be uses, there'll be challenges. And in a way, you have to say to your students, look, like Paul said, the future is yours. Impress me, do better than I could, get an A. Go and read chapter 18 of Conjectures and Refutations. It's really quite good. Basically, a debate between Karl Popper and Bertrand Russell, and you've heard of them. Well, I can give a synopsis. I've read it. Yeah, I'm relaxed that students know stuff and have got their finger on technology that is the future. And I've no doubt that this is the future. We're going to live in a world where AI does all sorts of jobs, and and that has pros and cons.
I have another question up here. I just hand up for a while now.
On that note, should we be trying to detect when a piece of information is generated by an AI, or should we accept or and put this into our system?
I'm very glad you asked that, because for most of the 20th century, I've been saying the most important subject you could teach undergraduates is philosophy, because in an age where information, you just need to know how to drive Google, right? What's the point of retaining information? What you need is critical skills. What you need is a sophisticated ability to recognize that substance that would stick to your shoes if you walk through a field with a bull in it. That's the real skill you need in the modern world. And the absence of that skill is amply demonstrated to me in that open access to knowledge. Again, I was there in the early days. I remember the enthusiasts in the 1990s saying, at last, the gates to knowledge are open. No longer do I need to be in a prestigious university. No longer do I need to go to a library or go through an editor. Suddenly, all knowledge is available to all. This is going to be wonderful. We're going to have a completely educated world population. But what happened in the 21st century? The Flat Earth Society has more members than ever. Belief in a flat Earth is growing. And of course, it's more difficult in the 21st century because you have to believe that aircraft windows are distorting, and that NASA and the Russians and the Chinese are faking pictures from space. You need a whole load of supporting beliefs that you didn't need a few hundred years ago. But nonetheless, right, there it is. Right, and this is why I sarcastically say everything on the internet is true. Right, in an information age, real information skill, real stepping back and thinking, could this possibly be true? That's more needed than ever. I could go on about this ad nauseum. There's a thing called the liar's dividend, which basically means if you can discredit all sources of truth, then the people who benefit are the liars. Right. So once you get people saying, oh, all the politicians are as bad as each other, they're all out to line their own pockets, they're all lying to us, right? Then whoever is lying gets the benefit. The truth tellers lose from that. You see? And this is modern philosophy. Very few young people believe in objective truth. And if you abandon objective truth, then you just have arguments, and you hope they don't turn violent. So yeah. So what's the most important skill you need? The most important skill is to be able to detect that substance that would stick to your shoes if you walk through a field that had bull in it.
So okay, we have another question.
How commonplace do you think that biased or discriminative AI is? And how would you mitigate its impact?
Come along to the main meeting, where we'll be talking about that.
Yeah.
I say to students, all data is biased. Now, that's actually disingenuous, because if it's, I don't know, a set of prime numbers, you know, it's hard to find bias in that. It's not true that every data set is biased, but there's so much bias in data, and it's so important. I mean, where do you want me to start? Facial recognition systems are much better at detecting white male faces than dark-colored female faces. Why is that interesting? Because both whiteness and maleness are minority traits on this planet. I wonder what's happened there. For example, and a lot of the problem with bias is, you know, our own human biases are unconscious. What's been built into AI systems is going to take a lot of time to work out. We just don't know. So
Will we ever know? Is the question, isn't it? I mean, who's controlling it? And, you know, there's no.
we won't know absolutely. We'll never eliminate all bias, but that doesn't mean we can't eliminate as much as possible. And I say, as an ethicist, we should eliminate as much as possible. And you should constantly, every time you have a data set, you should be thinking, what biases are here? You know, and there's a list of known cognitive biases growing all the time. So we know there are problems, and we know that the people deciding which groups to test, what entries to make, will have had biases for sure. And all you can do is reverse engineer and try and put it right as much as possible. And, you know, how good is it ever going to be? Well, probably, well, it certainly won't be perfect. I don't think you'll ever eliminate bias, but you can do your best.
Has anyone here felt that AI, or maybe applying for a job, you know, the bias has been passed against them? Has anyone experienced that?
Probably better to ask if anyone hasn't.
Yeah, I'm going to put my hand up. Yeah, definitely.
Well, there's an interesting story here too. You know, my teenage son turned 18, went out for his first part-time job, still at college, and it's with a very well-known British supermarket. And anyway, he puts his application in, does it nice and honestly, tells them blah blah blah, doesn't get selected. Gets a bit disheartened. The results that not getting selected came back within 2 minutes of hitting submit. So obviously AI or something was working there. So months rolled by, a bit dejected from that. Opportunity comes up again. So he talks to some of his friends who secured positions at the same store. And they told him what they put in. And it's effectively BS. But he puts it in and he's selected for an interview. And then he goes in front of a human and convinces him why he should get the job, and he's now working. So it just shows you the challenges you guys are going to have when applying for roles in the future. Could be a job, you know, weekend job, part-time job, but this will play out for larger careers as well. A few years back, I was laid off several years ago, and because of my age, I definitely feel there was some bias there. I walk into an interview, or I got the job. No, too old. You know, that's basically what it came down to. So bias is all over the place with this stuff. You have to be careful, but we will pick up on that later. But I just thought I'd share that with you, because some of you guys might be doing applications for things right now. Be careful what you say out there. Consult some friends, you know, people in the position. See how things are playing play. You have to play the game differently now. One of the days of sending out an old CV and someone says, "Oh, that's a nice guy, I'll get him in," or maybe chat and chat.
Good luck with that, because it never worked for me, and I've had many jobs. the advice I would give you is join the BCS or the relevant professional organisation, because that puts you inside the group, gives you a BCS email or whatever, and then target people who are working in fields that you might be interested in, and say, don't say, can I have a job? Say, can I have a chat? Because I'm very interested in the work you're doing. Then at least they know who you are. And if they do need someone, they've heard of you. That's how it works. Well, back me up, recruiters. That's how it works. You need to have your name on the desk of the people who are likely to need you. So yeah, select people who are doing work you're interested in.
So how many of you guys out here tonight feel a bit fearful of AI? And how many of you want to embrace it kind of like I do and kind of excited by it? Is there any way we could get a show of hands for those that are a bit fearful of it and where it's going?
I don't know which way I'd vote.
No, I don't.
It's a bit of both, really.
You're interested in it. It's interesting. How many
Well, ambivalence. We've got to sum it up because I think we're all ambivalent because we're not really sure how it plays out.
right?
I think, paraphrase what you were saying earlier, we're in the information age, too much information. How do we filter it? Now we have somebody who's very good at Googling. Now we have ChatGPT does it for us. We don't get 100 pages, we get 1 page, 2 pages. Brilliant. But do we know that 1 page is the truth that we're seeking? And what's the algorithm behind it or the bias behind it? We don't know. But I'm excited that I don't have to read 100 pages. If that machine that does it for me. But I do question what we're being fed, and the whole world will be fed things.
Yeah.
Is it the right stuff? And what is right and what is wrong? I mean, that's philosophy.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone.
No, we've got some online questions, Paul.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you want to take this one from Juliet Victor, because I don't know the answer to it. What's that one? But they're all good ones for you.
For me, I've heard that AI may have some form of application governance, lawful restriction in the future. Okay, can you elaborate on what that might look like and how that may impact the future of AI business? Well, you're the regulation guy. I think I have come from a bit of a governance background myself. And we kind of summarized a lot of it tonight that, the regulations will often follow the technology. But when it comes in, it will be welcome, because I would hope at that point in time that things like we're going to be talking about bias and things like that become regulated. So, put some controls around these engines that are generating this data or the people that are creating these things. So that's what I would hope that, sort of governance brings into play for this. And I think it is needed. We've had some illustration. I gave some illustration myself. It's sad my son has to actually, in his first job, fabricate some truths or fabricate some comments to get a job. It's just wrong. You should be able to go in there, be assessed at who he is. If he's good enough, get the job. If he's not, well, find someone else. But this is the age we're living in. So I am actually very much in favor of governance around this. But again, about it, but Blair, if you want to pick up on anything about that.
I'm going to talk to the second question,
Okay.
Which is that cyber criminals can use ChatGPT to actually discover weaknesses in the blockchain system. Yes, they can. Right? But what I'd say to the people in this room is be prepared to work on the other side. Cybercrime, I'm afraid, is going to be the future. But again, the only people who can do anything about it are people with the relevant technical skills. And there are opportunities. There are massive job opportunities.
And I think those skills will be needed, guys and ladies, definitely in the future. Thinking about where I ended up before I sort of went into my role now. So companies, I worked for a big bank, rather than high street bank in my last role, sort of in the corporate sector. And the people they were employing, the people they were interested in were those sort of like 20 to 30 somethings that had the skill sets like Blaze saying, and they were paid handsomely. All right. And there is a lack of talent. And there's opportunity with AI to hone your skills and go into the security aspect of AI, which is absolutely there, and specialize. So that's something for university people here tonight might want to consider doing, because there are definitely opportunities and they will pay very well. So the salaries the bank paid for these specialists that we had on the cyber team that I worked with were just astronomical. So there are opportunities here for you guys as you move forward in your careers. So while we talk about jobs being displaced, it's looking and thinking about, okay, AI's here. How do I frame that in my world? Am I going to be interested in this? Where can I take it? Can I do cyber? Yeah, I'm interested in that. I'll go and look at that. I'll get trained up, and then back. You're going to find your career starts going that way really fast. Anyway,
I have to say that whenever we have commercial AI companies in the APPG, they recite it as a mantra. You know, what's our main problem? Shortage of talent. Shortage of talent.
Yeah.
Shortage of talent. There's no doubt that the cyber criminals will use AI, but if you have the skill to use your AI against them, there are opportunities. I mean, everybody knows that you need it, and like Paul says, don't sell yourself short. There are big opportunities in this area, no doubt about it.
so did you enjoy the chat this evening? Are we doing more?
Maybe Doris can. We are going to have to wind up.
Okay.
We have another question.
Okay.
I'm wondering how to use it correctly. It's like, it could be used as a search engine like Google. And it works for me sometimes like a translator. I think it's good, but sometimes it gives me nonsense. How it separates it. It's like, oh, give me some reference related paper. It gave me the title, age, and like a proper. But I just can't find none of them. Are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. Can I search it? You can search it on Google Scholar. No, definitely no. And it's a peer review. How can I'm not afraid of it. It's like it's not that smart yet. It's strong but not smart. And I'm wondering how can we separate the information it provides us. For Google, we have the different pages. From the page design or from the resource, we can know whether this information we can trust or not. But from ChatGPT, how can we know that?
If you can work out an algorithm to do that,
Yeah.
you'll be as rich and famous as quickly as Larry Page and Sergey Brin. But there's two things I'm going to say. One, ChatGPT will get better, or it will be replaced with ChatGPT, and or it doesn't have to be OpenAI. I believe Microsoft are going to do a similar thing to front-end Bing. Is that right? So, you know, the new generations will come along very fast. And the other thing is, like with Google, develop your skills at using it. You know, practice. Because probably some things throw it off track and something make it useful. But you're kind of the generation that will work out. Maybe you have, maybe you're already skilled at using it. And you don't want to say too much in front of people who might work. I don't know.
I mean, what I found really, because my career sort of spanned before the internet with IT and then after. But what I found really was that, which was interesting, was actually when the internet came along, some of the same argument for boys there, you know, people going to lose their jobs, all this information is there. You know, things that were hit back then were public libraries. You know, they were like, you know, okay, well, do we really need a library? Everyone get on the internet. So questions like that. But then the internet brought about a whole new level of jobs. You know, there was cybersecurity, there was security more, then cybersecurity came in and other roles and everything else. And I venture to say it's going to be the same thing with, you know, the world we're living in now with AI.
I love the quote, and I don't know who said it, and if I can get it right, whenever a new technology comes along, we overestimate the short-term impact of it, while we underestimate the long-term impact. And that's absolutely true. Internet and Google and everything. We'll do this with ChatGPT. A lot of what we're talking about here is fiat, yes, of course, and everything else, but we will find a way around it. But the long-term impact of AI becoming mainstream, we can't even begin to understand what it's going to mean.
It's going to be big.
Yeah.
Yeah, for now, averagely speaking, the ChatGPT could produce like in the fields of social science and language, it could produce the essays of mark as speed. Is it possible that in the near future that for not because social science students cannot find the job as easy as like the IT or science or math? So in the near future, like less and less students will go to like study social science. So could it lead to something like the monopoly, like only the top students could like determine what's right and what's wrong in this field? Only like access on top scholars can like determine what's right and wrong, because less students are, less like one minds are coming to this field.
I don't think so. Because at least in Europe, I can't really speak for the US or China, but at least in Europe, there's sort of been an expansion of education, and more opportunities to get educated and to get your hands on information. What is important for me to remember is that when I was an undergraduate, maybe 3 or 4% of the population went to university, and now it's as near as, damn it, is to swearing, 50%, and that's a massive change. But that doesn't mean that educational standards are diminished. It's just a change, and probably a positive change. I mean, not everybody can be a top scholar. That's just a sad truth. But lots of people can be a pretty good scholar, and I call me optimistic, but the internet has given them opportunities to do that. I mean, you've got much better chance of being an autodidact now than you had 100 years ago, because it's just that much easier to get to information.
Yeah, because for now only like 20% of students can get an A from their course, but average speaking, the AI can produce essays with B or B+ grades with a much faster speed, but with that kind of
Yeah, well, I guess when I was an undergraduate, we weren't obsessed with grades because they didn't really matter. The degree wasn't a necessary requirement. We were curious about the subject, and that's a big difference. And what's more, we had the leisure and the luxury to just be curious. And if that isn't happening in universities now, that's quite sad, because a lot of this stuff is really interesting. Maybe it's just me, but what we've talked about tonight is really interesting.
Oh, sorry, I disagree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there any other quick questions? Because I think we're going to have to wrap because of time now. I think that's the question. Okay. All right. Thanks for coming, guys. I hope it's informative. I forgot to bring the social media stuff down for West Sussex, which I'll bring next time. But we do have a presence on, is it BCS Sussex Twitter, I think, and BCS Facebook and BCS LinkedIn, which I can you guys can try to find us and like us. I'm just trying to grow the social part for this chapter of BCS. Did you find it good tonight? And do you think there's some other things that you'd like to hear about real quick, you know, just sort of like in a quick 30-second blast? Is there anything that's on your mind that we should be talking about as BCS? It's okay if you don't have one up there. No? Okay. Right, well, stay tuned. We've got some interesting discussions coming up in the next few months. There's some publicity I know that goes on in the university here, and then external that I do. So thank you for coming once again. It's been great to chat to you. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.